Star Trek IV is the perfect opportunity to make up for a 16-year-old William Shatner disappointment. For nearly 6 decades, William Shatner has remained the beating heart of Star Trek's legacy. Captain James T. Kirk isn't just a character, he's a cornerstone of sci-fi history, a symbol of optimism, adventure, and bold leadership. Yet for all his cultural impact, Shatner's exit from the franchise remains one of the most divisive and unresolved creative decisions in Star Trek history. Now, with Star Trek IV once again positioned as the next major cinematic entry in the Kelvin timeline, the film has a golden opportunity to resolve a 16-year-old disappointment fans still haven't forgiven. This isn't simply about nostalgia or giving an aging actor one more curtain call. It's about closure. It's about honoring an icon whose final chapter never lived up to his legacy. And more importantly, it's about making Star Trek IV something bigger than just another reboot sequel. Because the truth is simple, the Kelvin universe has always existed to celebrate Star Trek's legacy. It's time to reconcile it with the character that started it all. Kirk's death in Generations was never the ending fans deserved. In 1994, Star Trek Generations attempted to pass the torch from Shatner's Kirk to Patrick Stewart's Jean-Luc Picard. Symbolically, that decision made sense. Narratively, it should have been the most meaningful send-off in franchise history. Instead, Kirk died in a forgotten canyon fighting a villain fans barely remember, uttering the much-criticized final line, "Oh my." There was no Enterprise, no crew, no emotional final scene with Spock or McCoy. No thematic closure for a character who defined a genre. It wasn't just disappointing, it felt disconnected from everything that made Kirk a legend. Over the years, Shatner himself expressed frustration with that ending. He even wrote novels resurrecting Kirk to give the character the epic final arc the films never granted. And fans agreed, the ending wasn't worthy of the franchise's greatest captain. 2009, a Star Trek tried to fix Shatner's legacy, but stopped short. When J.J. Abrams rebooted the franchise in 2009, Leonard Nimoy returned as Spock Prime in one of the most emotionally resonant cameos in modern sci-fi. The film even featured a deleted scene referencing Kirk Prime, with Spock hinting at his fate from the original timeline. But Shatner himself never appeared. Reportedly, the creative team debated multiple ways to include him: holograms, flashbacks, transmissions from beyond death. Ultimately, they decided forcing him into the story felt unnatural, and the opportunity slipped away. That was 16 years ago, and the absence still stings. Fans wanted a reunion. Shatner wanted closure. The franchise needed a bridge between eras. And now, Star Trek IV might be the last seat to finally do it. Why Shatner's return matters more now than ever. At 94 years old by 2025, Shatner is still remarkably active and healthy, even flying to space in 2021. He remains deeply connected to Star Trek's legacy, attending conventions, starring in documentaries, and continuing to speak passionately about Captain Kirk. But time waits for no one, not even Starfleet captains. If the franchise wants to honor Shatner while he's still able to participate, Star Trek IV is the moment. Waiting for future films, even if they happen, risks running out the clock in a way that would mirror Leonard Nimoy's passing before Spock received a final cinematic tribute. This is bigger than a cameo. It's about cementing his place in a franchise that often seems eager to move forward without acknowledging its past. How Star Trek IV can bring back Kirk without undoing canon. Bringing Kirk into the Kelvin timeline doesn't require resurrection or retconning. Here are 3 meaningful and lore-consistent ways to do it. 1. A multiverse convergence story. The Kelvin universe already exists because of a branching timeline created by Spock Prime and Nero. Embracing the multiverse would not only be logical, it would be thematically rich. Imagine a story where the very fabric of time is at risk, forcing timelines to converge, and bringing Kirk Prime face to face with Chris Pine's younger Kirk. The symbolism writes itself. A man confronting his own legacy, a captain learning who he becomes, closure through parallel heroism. This wouldn't revise Kirk's death, it would transcend it. 2. Kirk appears through temporal recording or holographic legacy. Perhaps Kirk left behind a final message designed specifically for a future Enterprise captain, a way to pass on what he never got to say. Consider the emotional power of Pine's Kirk hearing. Greater than being captain isn't about the ship. It's about who you become when you're responsible for every soul on board. It's intimate, personal, and achievable without altering timeline logic. 3. A post-death story set outside linear time. Star Trek has always played with metaphysical realms. Nexus, Q Continuum, Guardian of Forever. Kirk's consciousness could exist beyond mortality in a way that's spiritual and science-fictional, offering a farewell that finally means something. Instead of undoing his death, such a moment would turn it into a transformation. Why this matters for the Kelvin cast. Chris Pine has given us a younger, reckless, emotional interpretation of Kirk, one still growing into Shatner's iconic persona. But without resolution to the legacy of Kirk Prime, Pine's version exists in narrative isolation. Connecting them strengthens both. Pine's Kirk gains depth by seeing who he becomes. Shatner's Kirk gains closure by seeing what survives of him. This doesn't repeat generations, it redeems it. A tribute that could elevate the whole franchise. Marvel has Stan Lee cameos. Doctor Who has multi-Doctor reunions. Top Gun, Maverick turned legacy into storytelling fuel. Star Trek 4 needs a moment like that, not as fan service, but as emotional architecture. Imagine the final scene. Two Kirks stare out at the stars together, one at the beginning of his journey, the other near its cosmic end. One asks the other, "Greater than did we make a difference?" And Shatner's Kirk smiles. "Greater than we changed the galaxy. Now go further than I ever could." Fade to warp trail. Roll credits. That's not nostalgia. That's myth-making. The Final Chance to Do Right by William Shatner. For 60 years, Captain Kirk has represented humanity's belief in progress, courage, and curiosity. But Star Trek has never properly returned that respect through storytelling. His death was unworthy. His legacy has been overshadowed. His absence in the modern films remains glaring. Star Trek 4 can change that, not by rewriting history, but by finally honoring it. Fans don't just want Shatner back. The franchise needs him to complete its circle. Before Warp Drive pushes us to the future, we owe one last look back at the captain who boldly went first. If you'd like, I can also write alternate endings for this film concept, create a full storyline treatment featuring Shatner, rewrite the article to a different word count or tone, tribute that could elevate the whole franchise. Marvel has Stan Lee cameos. Doctor Who has multi-Doctor reunions. Top Gun, Maverick turned legacy into storytelling fuel. Star Trek 4 needs a moment like that, not as fan service, but as emotional architecture. Imagine the final scene. Two Kirks stare out at the stars together, one at the beginning of his journey, the other near its cosmic end. One asks the other, "Greater than did we make a difference?" And Shatner's Kirk smiles. "Greater than we changed the galaxy. Now go further than I ever could." Fade to warp trail. Roll credits. That's not nostalgia. That's myth-making. The Final Chance to Do Right by William Shatner. For 60 years, Captain Kirk has represented humanity's belief in progress, courage, and curiosity. But Star Trek has never properly returned that respect through storytelling. His death was unworthy. His legacy has been overshadowed. His absence in the modern films remains glaring. Star Trek